Hiya. Thank you all for coming. My name is Marc Sands, and I didn't understand a word of the introduction, but I'm assuming you know who I am, which will be helpful. I spent 10 years working at The Guardian and Observer newspapers, and about a year ago moved to the Tate Gallery in the UK. Now, I can't see you from here because the lights are really bright, but my hopeful assumption is that some of you have been to London, and you will more than likely have visited Tate Modern or one of the galleries. Because there's 4 Tates in the UK, there's 2 in London, 1 in Liverpool, and 1 in Cornwall. The interesting thing about a place like the Tate, particularly to be invited to talk at a conference like this, is that Tate is not, in fact, very few galleries that are historic in nature are, you would argue, the most technologically savvy or the most internet-focused. I was asked to come over to the Tate to begin to make amends on that. And what we're finding around the world, and it's led by probably 2 or 3 galleries, of which the Tate is one of them, that we are in a position where we are starting to be able to change the relationship between galleries and audiences. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about this morning. I've called it Old Media, New Media, Museums and Galleries, engaging with their audience, because from my point of view, I'm not a curator. My title is about media and audiences, and it's about developing channels where we can actually engage with the audiences. And my sense is there's been an absolute explosion in that territory that has been generated by the capabilities of online. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was a child, this is what I felt like about going to a gallery with my parents. It was a horrendous idea. Pretty boring, pretty dull, big rooms, white walls, pictures I didn't understand. Now, these are modern children, but imagine me, age 5 or 6, because that's how pissed off I would have looked like about the possibility of going to a gallery. The truth is, I think that relationship has completely changed and is in the process of completely changing for a whole series of reasons. And our ability to engage not just children of that age, but adults, is being revolutionized by the potential availability and possibilities of the digital framework. This is what you might have put in front of a gallery. Welcome to the very, very boring museum. Now, of course, galleries aren't boring. They're wonderful places. But the manner in which they're presented and the manner in which in the past they engage with their audiences, I think, has led to issues of engagement with various audiences. And I think that process is now changing completely. For the record, the Tate, there's about 7 million people a year go to the Tate, which I think is extraordinary. And of that 7 million, about 60%, excuse me, are under the age of 35, which I think is an extraordinary position. And the idea now that galleries are boring, dull, full of stuff that you don't particularly want to see, has been radically changed by galleries such as the Tate, the Guggenheim, MoMA, and much smaller galleries around the world. So I think this cartoon is no longer relevant, but it certainly was, when I was growing up. There's a fantastic podcast called the Slate Gabfest. You may be familiar with Slate magazine. It's an American online magazine. And they have a thing called the Slate Gabfest once a week. And it's 3 sort of slightly neurotic Upper West Side New Yorkers who just generate the most brilliant discussion about culture and the arts. And this was about 2 weeks ago. And a woman on the website said, look, can I say to the museums of the world, your websites suck. Maybe they don't want their websites to be too good. They want people to come to their museums. And I think that was definitely true in the past, but I want to show you how this is changing radically with some examples from around the world, and then a discussion, if I may, bringing it back to the Tate and the plans for the Tate. I don't know if you're familiar with the Google Art Project, but if you either get bored with what I'm saying, and I've got a computer in front of you, go to the Google Art Project for a couple of minutes. Google it and just go in. It is the most extraordinary thing that Google have done. They basically talked to about 17 galleries in 9 different parts of the world. And they said to them, we want to bring your art to the world in a way that was previously unimaginable. And what they did, they took, what was extraordinary is that only 17 galleries in 9 countries of the world said yes. The question I would like to know is why not all the galleries went for it. This is what they did. They took their Street View technology, which, as you can see in the bottom picture, and if you go on Google Street View, you'll know what I'm talking about, and they basically walked it around the galleries, and you could home in on any picture you like. In each gallery, they took one image, and they took a photograph that was, I think, somewhere in the area of 14 billion pixels, which takes it technically closer than the human eye can actually see. And it allowed you to walk around the galleries with this Street View technology and home in on pictures that you wanted, and look at one picture per gallery in a level of detail that is absolutely incredible. Please take a look at this project. It's phenomenal. It looks a bit like this. This is a picture that's in the Tate. This is a Chrysophilia picture called No Woman, No Cry, that in the daylight looks like this, but in ultraviolet light looks like that. And the detail, what I can't show you here, but if you go online later, you'll see it. You can go to within an unbelievable closeness to the picture. And it goes much, much, much closer than that. They then took Street View and walked it around the gallery. The gallery they did this at night time over 3 days. Walked through the gallery, and as you go around, you can look at pictures. And here they are photographing it in immense detail. And it's an astonishing project that I think is a turning point in the way that museums and galleries have engaged with the internet. In my view, the surprising thing is how few galleries actually said yes. The Tate was the first gallery that said yes and started the whole ball rolling with Google. The second global project I want to show you is the Guggenheim Museum in October 2010, which is the YouTube Play, which is a biennial of creative video. The issue for galleries is how do you get outside the gallery space? Well, there's two. One is how do you get outside the gallery space, and the second point is how do you show all the stuff that you've got? The Tate actually is the National Collection of British Art, and it has 72,000 pieces of art in the whole collection, but it can only show between 3 and 5% of that at any one time, at which point there's a fantastic opportunity for the internet, and I'll come to that later. The Biennial of Creative Review basically asked video artists to upload films and works of art that they'd created digitally on video. 23,000 people submitted works of art, and they chose 125 as a long list and 25 for a short list. And they made a really big play on it. Here's the Guggenheim in New York, which was live when they showed them outside. And it was an extraordinary relationship between a gallery and its audience. Now, coming from the world that you guys live in, you may not think this is quite remarkable, but I'm talking about cultures that are not based in the world of digital technology, but are based in the world of art. And the bridge between technology and galleries takes some doing. They are essentially relatively conservative institutions that need pushing into the digital age, and some have really embraced it. This is a couple more images of the Google Art project, of the biennial. Now, if you've ever been to Tate Modern, you will know that it's an enormous room, which is actually about twice the size of this room, called the Turbine Hall. And once a year, we ask a major artist of the world to put in an installation. This year, we asked Ai Weiwei, who is a Chinese artist and also political activist, to create an artwork for Tate Modern's Turbine Hall Unilever series. And what he created was this. Now, this is actually a series of seeds that look like this. Each of one is handmade, and there's 120 million of them in the art installation, which is an incredible thing in itself. But the really interesting aspect, we've never done this before, was we asked for a level of audience engagement. If you go to the Turbine Hall, the seeds are in a room about this big. Its floor is totally covered with them. And just behind is a large series of rooms where we have asked the audience, if they want to upload a question, upload a video that they can ask Weiwei themselves. This is an extraordinary thing for a museum to do. 20,000 people have uploaded videos, of which 15,000 are currently sitting on our website. And the really big deal about it is that Weiwei actually answers a whole series of the questions. He goes to the videos and he chooses the ones he wants to answer, which, bearing in mind, he's a Chinese artist come dissident living in China. It's a fairly extraordinary relationship between a gallery and the artist. These are other examples of the videos. Facebook and Twitter. Often when I speak, you go to an audience, you say, how many people are on Facebook and Twitter? I'm clearly not going to do that here, because I'm sure you're all on it. But when you talk to organizations, you find actually frequently they're not on it. And what's weird is the most senior people in the organizations are not on it. And when you speak at digital conferences and you find out that the most senior people, the leaders of organizations, are not engaged in the very simple act of Facebook and Twitter, you've got to begin to wonder what is their commitment to the digital future. For 10 years, I worked at the Guardian and Observer newspaper. And one day, about 4 or 5 years ago, the editor of the newspaper asked all the journalists to sign up to Facebook and to sign up to Twitter more recently. And he said, look, I don't care whether you use it or not, but you need to sign up to understand, A, the process of signing up, and B, if you want to use it, the potential for doing so. And Facebook, and you know this better than I do, has become one of the single largest mediums for not just social media, but all forms of interaction. More interesting than Facebook, personally, I find is Twitter, which I think is much less personal, much more interesting, and its brevity is part of its excellence, and it allows you to get your messages across in a way that I think was fairly unimaginable beforehand. At the Tate, we have about, I think it's about 250, 300,000 followers on Tate Twitter, but we've only just started that process. We are now moving, I think we'll get to 500,000, I think we'll get to 1 million fairly quickly, because we're in the lucky situation of being a content provider with interesting content that people want to engage with. We do fun things, like every Friday from the Tate, we give you the weather report for the weekend, and in London rather than Vilnius, and we say, here's a picture that represents the weather, a picture from the collection. We send it out, thousands of people look at it, thousands of people receive it. It's a very small but interesting way of engaging your audience. And for us, Twitter matters for the following reasons. It's an unbelievable form of distribution. I know of no other form of one-to-one communication that works as well as Twitter. It's definitely where things happen first. If we think of what's going on now in Libya or in Japan, you can't quite say that the news has been led by Twitter, but it's been enormously informed by the social media, of which Twitter has had an enormous part in that. Within the museum space, when we announce new stories, new things, we frequently use Twitter as one of the means of reaching the engaged audience. As a search engine, I think it rivals Google as well. Google works on an algorithmic scale. Twitter doesn't. Twitter works on the basis of actually what human beings are interested in and what human beings are actually doing. And I think that makes it very interesting. It's clearly a formidable aggregation tool, and it's a fantastic form of marketing. In the past, I was the marketing director for The Guardian and Observer, and you were always looking for new ways to engage an audience in a marketing sense. And the problem with marketing is it costs a lot of money. This is a phenomenally effective way of reaching an audience. It's also much more diverse. It allows completely different forms of audiences to engage with you. It strikes me as far more democratic than other forms of media. It's a level playing field. It doesn't really matter if you're Barack Obama or me. I can still do it. I have access to it. I clearly won't get as many followers, but I'm allowed to play in that field. It has a hugely long attention span. It allows a subject to develop, to create a story, to aggregate itself in a way that old media simply couldn't. It creates fantastic communities. And lastly, I think, most interestingly, it's a real agent of change. I want to show you another example of what I think is a very interesting application that exists in the gallery space. It's from the Street Museum in London. And the Street Museum allows you to, clearly has many, many photographs, many, many images of scenes of London. And anywhere you are in London, you can take a photograph, you can upload it, and you can overlay a photograph of the area as it was historically. So this is London now, and London, I would imagine, in about the 16th century, 17th century. It's a very famous painting of when the river froze. And you can overlay exactly the way you are, get an image from the past, and overlay it. And it leads to some extraordinary pictures. I particularly like this one. This is Carnaby Street in London, which is where it all happened in what they rather painfully term the swinging 60s. Carnaby Street overlaid with an image of today looks rather like that. So you can juxtapose the two images whilst you're in place, whilst you're in situ. I love this one. This is outside the Houses of Parliament. This is outside Buckingham Palace, excuse me, in London, where a woman suffragette who, and the suffragettes were the movement who called for equal voting rights for women in the early part of the 20th century. This is a woman being arrested by the police outside Buckingham Palace, and it's exactly the same spot from the 21st century to the early 20th century. And I think these are all ways in which engagement with audiences, from a gallery point of view, becomes very interesting. There was an article in yesterday's New York Times which talked about just this, where they had the equivalent of me from the 4 major galleries in New York, talking about the benefits of social space, social media. You might argue that galleries are coming to it slowly, but they are absolutely understanding the importance of it, particularly with regard to audiences and engagement. This is another one I love. It's a shoe cleaner here in London, or there in London, in fact, exactly the same spot from the early 20th century. Another lovely idea is a group called Art Finder. Again, it's a website where if you don't know that much about art but want to find out about it, you put in what you like, and it will tell you other pictures that are similar, that are in the same vein. It's a bit like the Amazon, if you like this, you'll like that. It's a brilliant idea. In use in galleries, it's a little more complicated. Gallery spaces remain, in my view, relatively conservative establishments. And the big problem for galleries is how do you, most people walk into an art gallery and they want to know more, they don't quite get what they're looking at, and they would like some help. The technology afforded by handhelds is allowing us now, if our visitors want, to take gallery tours in a way that was, again, 10 years ago, you had to have a curator telling you. The interesting thing about this is that people often don't take them because they're nervous that it makes them look a bit stupid and like they don't know what they're talking about or what they're looking at, which is a real shame, and I think the culture of that will change. And the culture of that will change as we're able to download the information onto your own machines, onto your own smartphones. At the moment, that capability is relatively limited, but that will change very soon. I want to talk about the Tate a bit. This is a pile of bricks that in 1976 was bought by the Tate. And it's by an artist called Carl Andre. And it caused the biggest stink imaginable. And it became the lightning rod in the world of modern art of what is art and what isn't art, which is not a discussion that's either particularly interesting or one that I think is relevant to today. But this pile of bricks was bought in 1976 and set off a firestorm from the media's point of view. And you could argue that pile of bricks is what led to the beginning of the enormous public interest in modern art. And it's led to things like this. This was the most popular of the Unilever series, where an artist called Olaf Eliasson essentially created the sun inside the turbine hall. I don't know if anyone saw it. It was about 8 years ago. I think it was 2003. It's the most extraordinary thing I have ever seen. And audiences didn't know what to think, how to relate to it, but they came in their thousands to see this, and it did look exactly like that. This was a Louise Bourgeois sculpture that took place. There was one inside the main gallery and one outside. These enormous spiders were all around Tate Modern. And this is one that was inside the gallery. This was an Anish Kapoor sculpture that was the entire length of the building and that was there for 6 months. And this was a thing called The Crack by Doris Salcedo, where essentially in the building we cracked the earth from one side of the building to the other, and it was, again, one of the most extraordinary artistic experiences in London. I'm showing you all this so you get a sense of what it's like inside the gallery space, but only so many people can clearly make it to a gallery. And for those of you who aren't sure about Tate Modern, that's what it actually looks like. In terms of how we engage with audiences, I'd rather not give you the theory and tell you the practice. Paul Gauguin is an artist who was a 19th century artist who is extremely famous, and we did an exhibition of his late last year that ran to January. And I want to show you how we did the exhibition and how we engage with particular audiences. The big thing in museums is what single image are we going to choose for any exhibition that we want audiences to come to. This was the image that we chose. It's actually a rather sad image because the woman in it has recently had a miscarriage, and the sadness in her face reflects that. But we thought it was a wonderful image and a very, very moving portrait. And that's the image we used for the exhibition itself. When you're marketing or trying to engage audiences, you do all the obvious things. In this case, we did a media partnership with the Sunday Times, which is one of the leading newspapers in the UK. We did a coffee thing with Cafe Nero, where you wrap it round. We did travel offers with various organizations. All the stuff you'd expect to do. We did posters, they exist on the tube. This is not the interesting part of what we did, by the way. We did posters, we put them on the tube, you put them on the buses, and that raises awareness of what you're actually going to be delivering. You do lots of online advertising, looks a bit like this, you've seen it all before. You do lots of digital marketing, and the digital marketing begins to generate awareness and audience engagement. We did lots of Google keyword searches. Now, Google keyword searches I found very interesting. Up here, there's one. The bottom one is in Spain, where clearly you don't pay till people click, because we knew that this was a sufficiently important exhibition that people around the world would come and see it. More digital advertising. Now, the bizarre thing about this stuff is that when banner advertising started a decade ago or more, people thought this was the greatest invention in advertising. I personally don't think it is. I think it's a very useful form of advertising, but I don't think it's the most engaging form of advertising. And the problem with it is that people rarely, if ever, click on them. We have about 500,000 email members, and we email them on a frequent basis of what's going on at the Tate. We do a lot of email marketing to our constituency. But where it got really interesting, and we had never done this before, and you might find it amazing. And the reason why I'm showing you all the other stuff is I want to get to this point, because in the context of a campaign and in a context with audience engagement, I think this was the most interesting thing. The woman on the left, on your left, is a curator for the GoGat exhibition. She's a woman called Christine Riding. And the Tate has never blogged before. And we said, look, we would really like you to blog the show, not just the PR puff, but the real story behind why you chose what you chose, your favorites, where all the pictures come from, and why you think it's such a terrific exhibition. Christine, and that's her standing in front of her office wall, where she has all the pictures, and she was choosing how the exhibition should be laid out. Over a 3 to 4 month period, she blogged 34 times, or 36 times, I think it was. In that period, we had around 250,000 views with 1,200 comments. Now, for an organization that has never blogged before, this we found extraordinary. Now, it's extraordinary for 2 reasons. Firstly, that we did it at all, because museums and galleries are quite closed organizations. They're highly intellectual organizations, and this is not an intellectual blog. This is a blog telling people in easy, simple, fun language, and in a very personalized way, why the GoGat exhibition was interesting. Equally, the man on the right is called Nick Sirota. And Nick Sirota is the head of, he runs Tate Modern and all the Tate galleries. And we also asked him to blog as well. And my point on that is, if you're coming from an organization that is not primarily a digital organization, you need to get the most senior people doing it. It is the only way that the other members of the organization will engage as well. If the most senior people don't do it, the rest just won't bother. Now, interestingly, the blog slightly split opinion. Some people in the Tate loved it, some people didn't like it at all, and they didn't think it was intellectually appropriate. Others thought this is exactly the way we should engage with audiences. And I spoke to all the curators and said, look, I can't force you to blog, but I think it's a great thing if you would. This was the first one we did. If you go to our website now, there's a whole series of blogs that lift the lid on the exhibitions that we're currently running. There are 3 or 4 going on at the moment, one for Orozco, a Mexican artist, a watercolor exhibition that we're currently doing now. And my sense is this is the way the Tate and other galleries are going to develop the engagement with their audiences. And the visitor reviews, this is what they were talking about. This was a word cloud of the sorts of things people were asking. My favorite blog, my favorite post actually, When you go to a gallery, you know that you see a series of words next to the picture, and it sort of tells you what the picture means. And this is done by a department called the Department of Interpretation, which sounds very Orwellian, but it isn't. It's a tremendous group of people who are trying to explain to an audience who want a bit of help what the picture's about. And we said, we put up a couple of pictures and said, actually, to the audience, what would you like to say? What do you think it means? Now, as is always the case with blogging, a lot of what you receive is pretty banal, not that interesting, and sometimes quite rude. But a lot of it was absolutely brilliant. And the brilliant ones then engendered further debate and discussion. So social media, I've talked about that already, but we have, in combination, somewhere near 500,000 followers between Facebook and Twitter. I don't think that's that many for an organization that has 7 million visitors a year, but you have to understand, we've just started embarking on this process. My sense is this will get to 1 million fairly quickly, and then we'll continue to grow. We do a lot of data capture, a lot of competitions, a lot of outdoor advertising, a lot of press advertising, a lot of radio advertising, none of which I think is as interesting as what we're doing in the social media space. All this stuff is easy. We also do a lot of film, which we distribute. This is a film we made about Paul Gauguin's life that we actually put on the Guardian website. And as is ever the case, you just have to distribute your content absolutely everywhere, link it to everything. And this film was viewed by several thousand people, largely because it was on the Guardian website. People don't come to the Tate's website that much. They're learning to, but we need to distribute our content everywhere. We did an app which allows you to go around the gallery space and find out about all the images that you're seeing if you wish. So we had a situation where this is what the attendance figures looked like. Initially, we had predicted that about 315,000 people would come to the exhibition. In the end, 420,000 people came. Now, I don't know if it was the poster, if it was the blog, if it was the newspaper reviews. But what I do know is that we normally, when we have an exhibition, the margin of error either way, either for success or failure, is somewhere between 5 and 20%. This was 35% over target, and I'm pretty convinced that the work we did in the digital space is what made this a particularly successful pay-for show. So lastly, if I may, I just want to turn to our own website, because we are dragging it from this and going back to the quote I told you. Can I say to the museums of the world, your websites suck? It's an important benchmark for us to start from. We had 10 principles for Tate Online. Tate's website should be for Tate's online audience, which may sound like a really obvious statement. It isn't, because many cultural institutions actually don't talk to their audiences, they don't ask them, they just do what they do and hope people come. In the case of our website here, our view is we won't do that. We will talk to audiences, we will research, particularly the navigation system, the nav bar, and we will research in some detail the development of our website. So the website, unlike the museum, is created by and for the audiences themselves. It's both a platform for publication, but also for interaction. And the website must be alive with conversation and opinion. I want the Tate's website to be the place where modern and contemporary art is discussed. It should be the lightning rod for all that. We have the content, we have the people, we have the technology, we just need to put it together, which we're in the process of doing now. We also do a lot of online commerce, and we sell a lot through the internet. And all the web pages should be the start of the journey that anyone takes. People rarely go to the home page, they come in from wherever they like, and our website is developed with that in mind. The content owners should manage their own content. We want people to be able to upload whoever, wherever, within the organization as a whole. And the content and interaction should be taken straight to an online audience. And also personalization will improve the visitor experience. And lastly, the website must be sustainable. We will launch this website in the next 6 months, but this website will change again within months after that. So our sense is once you've done it, you've got to do the whole thing all over again from the day you started. The big features are the redesign. It's going to look completely different. But for me, the really interesting areas are the community features, the user commenting, the blogs, and the social media integration, which at the moment we're halfway there, but we're getting there. And the last thing is this notion of what we call the collection. The collection is the 72,000 pieces of work that Tate is looking after for the nation, because that is essentially what we're there for. But the problem is you can't see half of them. We are now making a digital archive that allows anyone from anywhere to access all 72,000 pieces of artwork, and I'm going to show you that in just a sec. So this is what the website looks now. It's fine, it's predictable, it's exactly what you'd imagine. But it's not a website that's engaged with a user. It's basically a marketing tool to sell tickets. In fact, everywhere is selling. You can sell Gauguin prints, you can be a part of the Tate, and there's a big banner advert. It's not really, or it doesn't look like to me, like an art website. It's perfectly fine, but it's about 5 years out of date. This feels like a website from a previous era. What it's going to look like is this, which is where art is right at the heart of it. So you will always, when you open it, see an image rather than a marketing selling point. And embedded in the image will be one of the threads of the discussion that we will be having on any one day on our blog site. And at the bottom of the website, you can see what's coming up next. This is Tate Liverpool's homepage, which is the one in the north of England. I'm just going to whip through these. This is our learning area. One of the key aspects of all museums is learning. And it's something that is integrated into the process rather than something that you formally do. But our online learning capabilities will be phenomenal and significantly greater than those available in the gallery itself. And our sense is that online is the place to develop the learning capabilities, whether you're a child or an adult. These are more just some screen grabs. Now, interestingly, up on the nav bar, you'll see along third in, you'll see, or fourth in, you'll see art and artists. And this may feel like a small change to you, but for us it was very big. It used to say collection. Now, collection is a real inside the art world word. And when we researched it with users of our website, they had no idea what we meant by the collection. And so, please, can you use a different phrase? And we came up with art and artist, which we think explains exactly what people are searching for, far better than the word collection. Now, this is our new blogging space, where there will be a whole different series of threads. And I think the interesting thing about it is the embedding of all the social media opportunities, which were embedded on every single page. As you scroll down, here we've talked about the 10th anniversary of Tate Modern. And as you scroll down, there's a comment and blogging space that people will clearly use. This here's the ability to search for pictures. Here, we've said that you can search for a portrait, any portrait in the Tate, and I think there's 2,158 portraits of the Tate. You'll be able to look at them this way, and you can search by whatever you want. You can search by color, by person, by mood. If you're depressed, you can look at pictures about depression. If you're happy, you can look on pictures of happiness. If you want to look by color, by animal, whatever you want. And within moments, the entire 72,000 database will reorganize itself. You can see it this way. You can see it like this. You can bring up a picture. You can bring it up further. It will tell you where the picture is. It will give you some words about the picture. It will also allow, if you like that picture, it will suggest that you look at these pictures at the bottom. Rather like Amazon, if you like this, you might want to buy that. And that's repeated again here, where you've got a picture, where it was painted, and the blog associated with that picture. This is the bit I really love. Here you've got all the portraits in a line. And that's one way to look at it. You can also fill your screen with it that way. Or if you want, you can set your computer so you can have every single image in the entire database, all 72,000 of them, changing on your computer the entire time. Which is, again, for galleries, a very new, very radical way of presenting themselves. So our website, in our sense, needs 3 layers. One, it operates as a simple brochure. And currently, that's all the website really does. It's very difficult to search the existing website. But the new one, the brochure aspect of it, will be there, will be less prominent than it currently is. It exists as a content channel. And lastly, it will engage as a highly interactive platform. I want to end, if I may, with Tate's future plans. We've talked about, if you've been to London, you will know the Tate building. Now, behind the Tate was a power station that was decommissioned in 1949 and turned into a gallery in the year 2000. Behind the Tate are 3 enormous oil tanks that used to power the station. And if you go to London now and go to the Tate, what you'll see is that, where the oil tanks have been uncovered and they're being turned into new museum and gallery spaces that will open next year. That's what it looks like now. And it's about half as much Tate space again than we've had in the past. Eventually, the building will look something like that, and the main new building, which will sit on the oil tanks, will look like this, which will be the additional part of Tate. And that will be the view looking out to St. Paul's from that place. So thank you very much.